So that's why I like the old architecture, because it already exists and it gives you like a frame to work in. So whenever I think about my future projects, I always imagine myself like fixing something.
Voices to Hear.
Hello and welcome to Voices to Hear. I'm Ivan Barbo, and today we are talking with Maca Marinkovic, a student in architecture who's from Cyril and Methodius University in Skopje. She has been studying there for 6 years, and thank you for coming, and we would like you to introduce yourself.
First of all, thank you for having me. I'm very happy that you asked me to do this podcast for you. I'm Maca Marinkovic. Actually today is my 25th birthday, so officially I'm 25 years old, and I have been studying architecture for 10 years now. First I started with my architecture high school, which is 4 years, and then I have been studying at my university for 6 years. I also have like a lot of hobbies also, I can add that, right?
Well, I would like to know why have you been studying architecture so far? What interested you in this kind of studies?
Well, historically speaking, my family is actually most of my family is a part of the construction business. So some are architects, some are engineers, and so on. So my parents, like, especially because it's on my mother's side, my mother wanted me to like continue the family legacy, and it was also a good thing that I had like a love for architecture and crafting and creating things. So those two things combined, I think, led me to start studying architecture and continue. Because sometimes people, it's very common in our profession to start and then give up because it's not for them, which I totally respect. But I'm just always joking with my mother that she guessed that architecture is good for me.
I would like to know what do you like in it. For example, are you particularly interested in some kind of style? What interests you particularly in that kind of studies?
Now, this year, I have been studying about the history of Macedonia, and I have to admit the Macedonian architecture is my favorite. No bias there. I seriously love it a lot. I especially love the Macedonian city architecture, not the religious one or like the... I prefer the houses, so I'm very fascinated by the Macedonian house and their shape and the way that normal people could build their own house and it still stands like hundreds of years later, and that just fascinates me. And how it's like incorporated in the terrain, in the nature. I recently was to Ljubojno, which is a village in the region of Prespa in Ohrid, and I was just amazed by how natural the village looked, how incorporated everything is with the nature, which I love and I prefer over like the architecture ruling over everything and being dominant in the location, for example.
So, and do you have personal motivations which are also part of this will to study architecture?
Yes, of course. It got me this far, so I have to have something. So my personal ideas for architecture are like divided in like two categories. What I would like to do with architecture. The first thing is I would really like to fix up old traditional houses and turn them into something functional again, which I think will benefit the Macedonian villages and smaller towns, because we have a problem where young people are leaving and coming to either Skopje, like the which is the capital city of Macedonia, or they're leaving Macedonia altogether. And I believe that if we fix up their houses and like the architecture, it will probably shine better, and maybe more tourists will be attracted, or the life in the villages will be reignited. So that is my one wish for what to do with architecture. And then the other one is, of course, my second passion, which is sustainability and ecology. So I would like to incorporate architecture with ecology and sustainability to make a better future, because I realize that buildings have a huge impact on the planet, and creating a building, it's a huge drain of resources and like impact with it's a negative and a positive impact, of course. But I would like to use my knowledge and try to make it better, like more sustainable, more eco-friendly. And I hope that in the future it won't be as impactful as it is right now. So basically it's like I would like to either go back to the past or concentrate in the future.
So, and do you have, because I know for being a bit related, let's say far from to this world, are you interested in personal motivations, like for example being recognized, leaving a legacy, these kind of things?
Well, by continuing, by learning architecture, studying architecture, and choosing that career, I have already continued my family's legacy. And in order, when you talk about being recognized, I actually do not really wish that because yes, I respect all of the famous people that have done things, but I would just like to do what makes me happy and work on projects that make me happy, and hopefully by doing that I will be successful enough to like have a stable and good career. But I'm not looking for fame and fortune. I would just like retire to one of my old houses in some village and live out the rest of my life in peace and nature.
Okay, so you're more of a passionate person.
Yes.
Okay.
I would like, my mother always says that you need to work to have a career with something you love. And that motivation and that personal love of your career will always guide you better than like the inspiration for like fame or fortune or like being recognized. So I put my own wishes and ahead of all of that.
Okay. So I would like to know now, because it's really interesting, what kind of fields you have studied so far at the university. So can you detail us a bit more the kind of things that and also a presentation of this?
Okay, so actually my university is very interesting because we have a vast option of fields, and we learn a little bit of everything. So we even have like professors that come from other colleges, like art colleges and the civil engineering colleges and all of the others, to like teach us something because architecture is in everything, in every aspect of the world of your life. Architecture is there because you need a sports center for doing sports, you need a hospital for like being a doctor, you need a building to be a lawyer. So you need it everywhere. So that's why we need to study everything. For me, this is a little bit too much, to be honest, because we have a lot of subjects, and by having a lot of subjects, we don't really concentrate on one thing. But as I said, we have had like subjects like photo and video editing. We have had subjects like physics or sustainability, or we also have construction, interior design. We have studied a lot of like different types of buildings, like factories, sports facilities, hospitals, houses, hotels, schools, everything. Like I'm grateful that they try to teach us a little bit about everything, so we learn and understand where we want to continue. Because at the end, I believe that it's upon yourself to like continue your education and to strive for that one career path that you have chosen.
So now let's tackle your plans for the future, because I think it's really interesting also to talk about this part now that you have finished your studies. Do you want to be involved in shaping Skopje's architecture, or you prefer to be involved to work abroad? So what are your plans? I'm talking about the plans in the next future.
That is an interesting question, seeing as I always tend to stress about my future and what is going to happen, yet I have no idea where I'll end up. To be honest, Skopje is a little bit crowded right now with buildings and architecture. So, as I said, I would maybe probably concentrate on the villages in Macedonia, if I have to stay in Macedonia. Or I would really love to work on outside projects, like in foreign countries, and I don't know, gain more skills involving the environmentally friendly architecture. And then I would hope to maybe come back to Macedonia and utilize that knowledge to like make something good and productive here, and like maybe evolve our architecture in the next step.
Okay. And so do you have ideas, plans of things that you would like to create? I don't know, it can be a fountain, maybe bigger projects.
Well,
do you see do you see things in big, or you're most of a modern one?
Very small. I look at things in a micro aspect, because I actually wanted to continue to design objects for houses, like pots, teapots, or like chairs. So I really look at the like the smallest picture ever, like the human scaled picture, where we are directly in touch with architecture. So that's why I don't usually aspire to build huge buildings or giant like projects. I always think about smaller things, like maybe redesigning the space. For me, for example, to be honest, I don't like the tabula rasa method, where I have like the complete freedom to create whatever I want, because to be honest, I'm not very decisive and I will never decide what to do. So that's why I like the old architecture, because it already exists and it gives you like a frame to work in. So whenever I think about my future projects, I always imagine myself like fixing something or restoring something, like something that is always here, that has been here. I would like to make it better and make it work, or like make another use out of it, which I think ties back to my like sustainability way of life, because it's already there. So why not use what we have and not build more, and therefore don't like destroy our resources and like put pressure on our planet. And also like the my biggest dream, and the thing that I always dream about, is my home. I don't know where it will be, but I always, when I see something, I always compare it in a sense like, will this be good for my home, or will this not be good for my home? So basically that is the only thing that I fantasize about, and I plan, like, I think forever since I have been young, my own house. I still don't know how it will look, but I always think about it.
Okay, so I've also noticed something, because, well, as a volunteer in Skopje, I've worked here for 7 months, and I have admired the style in Skopje, which later I realized that it was called brutalism. And brutalism is everywhere in Skopje. So I would like you, because you're Macedonian, you're also familiar with the history of this city. How would you define it? and also to tell us how has it influenced Skopje. And well, for example, you can talk about different buildings to help us.
Okay, well, brutalism actually happened after the tragic earthquake that happened in Skopje in 1963, where almost 80% of the buildings were destroyed. So what happened is suddenly Skopje had a big crisis, but also it was like completely like demolished. So there was like a room for improvement, and we had a lot of like selections, a lot of architects working from abroad, and a lot of Macedonian architects actually, because the Macedonian Architecture University was created in 1949. So it's we just celebrated our 70th anniversary. So by that time, like we had like quality architects that were working on the like buildings. So brutalism is why it happened. First of all, it's brutalism are buildings that are built with concrete as the finish on their facades. So that means that the outside of the building basically looks very rough, but that gives it a little mystery to it and a little bit of because of the material, which is easily shapeable in every kind of form. That's why you have those crazy like arches and like things sticking out of buildings and everything, because concrete lets you do that. As a material, it's very flexible. So that's why they loved it, and it gives you the power to be more artistic with the buildings. So, but from, well, not personal experience, but what my mother had experienced, more concretely with the post office in Skopje, which burned down sadly, and it's no longer working, which is one of our signature brutalism buildings. It's not very nice to work and live in brutalist buildings because they are very cold because of the concrete. And for me, I would say that I personally think that brutalist buildings should be more like monumental, or like be something that is not used in everyday life. So maybe like a museum or something like that, because of the I guess cons it has in negative in everyday life.
Okay. So, and what do you think about the work of this Japanese architect who was selected at the selection process?
Kenzo Tange?
Yeah, exactly. What kind of do you think his work is positive or negative overall?
Well, seeing as he had a very interesting plan about Skopje after the earthquake, and he is the one who designed our current railway and bus station. He had grand ideas, but I believe that they weren't executed correctly, because he had like a lot more ideas and like plans, but the I guess the government or something didn't didn't work them through till the end, because our current railway just he is the one that lifted it up from the ground, because our railway station is not like on earth level, it's like lifted up from the ground, and that was his genius idea in order to not cut off that part of the city. He wanted to leave room for the city to grow towards the after the railway station. And also he had big plans for the railway station to be to have like hotels on the side, to have like people would be able to walk next to the trains, and he had like grand ideas of like putting some administration buildings like inside, like combined with the railway. But as I said, I believe that his ideas were too into the future for that period in Macedonia, where people were only thinking of devastation and how to find houses for all of the people that lost their homes.
Now that we are talking about Skopje's architecture, I think that it's interesting for people who hear about us what kind of architectures, the different types of architecture that can be found in Skopje. I've heard about brutalism. I know that also neoclassicism has influenced the shape of the town. So could you just at least a brief history of this and also to help us know what kind of influences have shaped this town so far?
Well, it's very interesting because you can literally see the decades and you can see the periods of influence as you start from the Kale Fortress, which is the Kale Fortress is made with some of the walls and towers are made with remains of the antique city of Skopje, which was the first shape, let's say, of the first city of Skopje. But that city was like a little bit outside of today's Skopje, and there was again a catastrophic earthquake in 513 or 18 year. So it was like in antique times, and the Skopje city was destroyed. And after that, it was relocated because as the times were moving, there were more war conflicts, more people trying to like take over Skopje and and the people inside. So they moved a little bit to the hills and they created the Kale Fortress. So basically, the Kale Fortress is the first thing that was created from the new Skopje. After that came the Ottoman Empire, like after the Roman Empire and all of that, came the Ottoman Empire, which conquered Skopje, of course. And the interesting thing is they started to move the city outside of the fortresses, because before that, everything was happening in the fortress. And with the Ottoman Empire, they started like looking for more flat surfaces so they can build their like lavish houses, palaces with gardens, with everything, because they were the ruling class, like the Ottoman Empire. The Turkish were the ruling class, and the Macedonian people, which were like the ruled, they stayed near the fortresses. They stayed on the hills where like their houses were a little bit more compacted. So outside, as you can see in Skopje, next to the Kale Fortress is the Turkish Bazaar, which was from Ottoman Empire, like those years, from 14th century, and it continued to develop right up until the 19th century, when the railway station was created. But this is the old railway station, which was destroyed by the catastrophic earthquake in 1963. So when the railway was created, goods and products from Europe started to be imported in Skopje. So that's when we started to have, like, that's around 19th century. That's when Skopje started to get modernized, for example. So they had, so they exited out of the Charshia, and they slowly continued to evolve on the other side of the river Vardar, which is like literally in the middle of the city. And what also prompted this was sadly the earthquake that, as I said, laid waste to everything. And from that moment on, the planners started to move the center away from the old bazaar and on the other side of the city. So that's why on this side of the city we have more modernistic architecture. And after that, it just like started also spreading like from the side, like from east to west as well, because it was expanding very fast. And these new regions were only populated by small I guess, ready-made houses that were like constructed quickly so they can house all of the people of that lost their homes. So basically that's how, and after that came brutalism and all of the other things where people started to express themselves more like in a more artsy way, because like everything from the catastrophe was taken care of. And after that people started to create like more artistic buildings. And now, right now in this period, what is happening is people are actually like taking down the ready-made houses, and in their place they're making like buildings that are modern for this day and age. So that is basically all of the history in Skopje and how you can see it in basically in layers if you start from the Kale fortress.
Okay, there is a governmental project which has been very debated, and it has been released recently. It's the project Skopje 2014.
Ah, yes.
I don't know if you have heard about it, probably, yes.
Of course, it is the great debate of the Skopje architects.
And so I would like to know, because I think this monument, well, they have more than 130 buildings that have been erected in the city, especially in the city center. Let's be more precise. I would like to know, what do you think about these monuments? Do you think, for example, that they contribute to Macedonian identity? Do you think that it was a good strategy from the government to do that? Or you can also tell us a bit more about the architecture. What if it is good architecture for you? These kind of things. What are your feelings towards them? The sculptures.
Okay, I have no qualm with the sculptures. I mean, I guess it's art. I'm a little bit sad about the buildings, because what they did is cover the history that Skopje already had, and it was a modern history. It wasn't that as old as Baroque or the Renaissance, and they made it into Baroque. But to be honest, history is history. They just created more history for Skopje, and then we will continue learning about this. Like the next generations will learn about this phase of Skopje, and it will always be debated whether it was a good thing to do or whether it was not a good thing to do. So I believe it just depends on the people, because there are some people that I've seen that they like this, especially tourists. They have told me that this looks a little bit like Las Vegas. But I don't know, maybe it was a good step for bringing in more tourists. Maybe it was a bad step in the viewpoint of architecture, but in the end they just created history, so they're here to stay, and we will see what happens in the future.
Okay. So, well, you know that of course that eco-responsibility is not the earth of our future, and the sustainability of our lives is something that is at core of every policy in the world. So I would like to know what kind of building materials do you think are the most appropriate for towns in the future?
This is a little bit of a hard question, since I'm still researching this topic, because it's a part of my master thesis. First of all, I would always go for local materials where you can use them, because they're like locally sourced, and they're, I guess, more appropriate for the climate that like the building will be located in. And after these materials, I would hope that there are some new types of materials that are more eco-friendly, but in the end I believe that what is natural is the most eco-friendly thing to do. So I don't know in the future how will we interpret these materials, how will we continue to make them like I guess last longer and also be eco-friendly. But I hope that we will not have to produce like materials that are toxic for the environment, and that people will find a way to be more natural yet have sturdy buildings that are modern and can help with all the needs of the humanity that we'll have in the future.
Okay, so thank you, Maria, for helping us in understanding better this world that is architecture. That is probably fascinating for a lot of people. So, would you like to add something? In particular, related to.
What would I like to add? I don't know. Just I would like to wish for to the people, and I would just like to tell them that sometimes they should stop and look at the buildings, and maybe they will find out something more about their culture, their way of life, and themselves. And they should pay attention to the way they're living, like the space that they're living in. So because it can tell you a lot about a person from personal experience.
Okay, so thank you for your presence, and maybe we will invite you for another podcast in the future. Who knows?
Thank you for having me, and I look forward to that.